Amelia was just 14 when her world collapsed. Her parents died in a car crash that left nothing behind but silence and sorrow. The warm home filled with laughter turned into a cold memory buried under grief. What was once a life of love became a nightmare. Her relatives did not shed a tear. Instead, they saw an opportunity. They took everything: the house, the savings, the jewelry, every last coin. Then they took her to the city, Las Vegas, and left her in a crowded alley without a goodbye. She sat on the sidewalk, clutching a small bag with a broken zipper. It held the last photo of her parents, her only memory. The lights of the city blinded her. People passed by without noticing the lost girl with empty eyes. Her stomach growled, her throat burned. But no one stopped. No one cared. She spent her first night under a flickering street lamp. Cold winds swept through the alley like a thief stealing warmth. Amelia curled up against a dirty wall. Tears slid down her cheeks silently. She missed her mother's voice, her father's jokes. She missed being loved. Morning came with hunger and shame. She walked for hours asking for help. Most ignored her. Some laughed. A few spat cruel words. "Get a job, you rat." One man threw coins at her like she was a dog. She picked them up with trembling hands. It was enough for half a piece of bread. She found an old cart and began picking up trash, bottles, cans, cardboard. She sold what she could to a recycling center. It barely paid enough for a bottle of water. Kids from nearby schools saw her digging through bins and pointed fingers. "Look at the trash girl. Her name is garbage." Adam and Eve were the worst. Rich kids with shiny shoes and cruel mouths. They made fun of her every time they passed. They posted pictures online. Amelia the sewer rat. The whole street laughed. She tried to get a job, waitressing, cleaning, anything. But no one hired a girl with torn clothes and dirt on her face. She washed herself in public bathrooms. She brushed her teeth with her finger. Still no one gave her a chance. Each night she cried silently, holding the photo, whispering to her parents, asking them why, asking the stars to take her away. But the stars only twinkled above like silent watchers. One rainy evening, she saw her reflection in a shop window. Her hair matted, her eyes sunken, her skin pale. She almost did not recognize herself, but something stirred in her heart. A whisper, "You are not meant to die here. You are not garbage." And for the first time, she believed it. Days turned into weeks. Amelia survived by collecting trash and sellings, old newspapers she found lying around. She cleaned each page with her sleeves and stood by traffic lights offering them to strangers. Most passed her by. Some gave her a quarter. A few gave her a look of disgust. But she never stopped. She began to notice how people looked at her, not with pity, but with contempt. Mothers pulled their children away. Shopkeepers chased her off with brooms. One old man threw water on her as she sat resting by his store. "Get away, you filth. Go die somewhere else." At night, Amelia found shelter under an old bridge. Rats became her roommates. Hunger became her shadow. Yet in the darkness, she still clung to that old photo. The edges torn, the smiles fading, but to her it was everything. She watched the world move on without her. Children laughed in parks. Lovers held hands. People lived lives she could only dream of. She would sit and stare, wondering what it felt like to be clean, to be seen, to be loved. One afternoon, she wandered near a hotel where a crowd had gathered. Cameras flashed. Reporters screamed, and out stepped a woman like a goddess. Tall, elegant, confident, a famous model. The crowd roared her name. Amelia stood behind the barrier, watching her float down the red carpet. For a moment, their eyes met. Or maybe she imagined it. She looked at her own reflection in the glass door. Ragged clothes, bare feet, a plastic bag as a pillow. And something cracked inside her. Not out of jealousy, but out of longing. What if I could be her? What if the world saw me not as trash, but as treasure? She began collecting magazines from dumpsters. She stared at the models, studied their poses, imitated them in secret. Each night she stood before puddles pretending they were mirrors, practicing her smile, her walk, her gaze. She had nothing, but she had a dream. The bullying did not stop. Adam and Eve rode their bikes past her every day. They shouted insults, threw wrappers. Once they stole her bag and dumped it in the gutter. She chased them, screaming, crying. But they only laughed. People in the neighborhood mocked her too. Look at her pretending to be a star. She should model for garbage trucks. Even the newspaper boy called her names. She swallowed her tears, bit her tongue. She kept walking, kept learning, kept believing. One day while selling newspapers near a mall, she saw a flyer fall from a woman's purse. She picked it up. It was an advertisement for a beauty contest. Open auditions, all ages, no entry fee. Her heart raced. This was it. A door had opened. She spent the next 2 days preparing. She found a long white shirt someone had thrown away. She washed it in a public fountain. She brushed her hair with her fingers until the knots hurt. She practiced walking in a straight line, smiling despite her missing tooth. She had no heels, no makeup, but she had courage. On the day of the audition, she walked 6 miles barefoot. Her feet bled. Her stomach growled, but she arrived. She stood at the back of the long line of girls with perfect nails and designer bags. Some looked at her with disgust. Some whispered and pointed, but she stood tall. This was her beginning. No matter what happened next, she was done being invisible. The security guard at the entrance stopped her. His eyes scanned her from head to toe. His face twisted with disgust. "Are you lost?" She shook her head and handed him the flyer. "I came for the audition." He laughed. "You must be joking." He turned to the receptionist, who also chuckled. "Take a look at this girl. She thinks she can be a model." Amelia stood her ground. Her heart pounded. Her cheeks burned. But she did not move. Eventually, a coordinator walked by. A woman in a navy dress with sharp eyes. "What is going on here?" Amelia raised her hand. "I want to audition." The woman stared at her in silence, then sighed. "Let her in. We have 30 minutes left." The room inside was cold and filled with mirrors. Girls were touching up their makeup, rehearsing their walks, laughing with each other. Amelia found a quiet corner. She could hear whispers, smell expensive perfume. She looked at her reflection, pale skin, worn-out shirt, but there was something in her eyes that even she had never seen before. Fire. When her name was called, she stepped forward. Judges sat behind a long table. One of them raised an eyebrow. "Tell us your name and why you are here." Amelia took a deep breath. "My name is Amelia. I am here because I want the world to see that beauty is not what you wear. It is what you survive." There was silence. One of the judges asked her to walk. She took slow, steady steps, her bare feet against the polished floor. Every eye in the room was on her. Some were mocking, some curious. But the main judge, a woman with silver hair, leaned forward. "What makes you think you can become a model?" Amelia looked her in the eyes. "Because I have walked through things most people would never survive. Because I am still standing." They dismissed her without any response. She left the building unsure whether she had impressed them or embarrassed herself. Outside, the air was thick with smoke. Her feet ached. Her stomach was empty, but her heart was full. She had faced them, spoken her truth. That night she cried again, but for the first time it was not out of pain. It was out of pride. A week passed, then 2. No call, no letter, just the same routine. Collect trash, sell newspapers, sleep beneath the stars. The voices of Adam and Eve still echoed down the street. "Hey model, found your runway yet?" But she ignored them. She had something they would never have: purpose. On the 3rd week, she was sitting near a food stall when a woman approached. She wore a red blazer and carried a clipboard. "Are you Amelia?" Amelia stood up quickly. "Yes. Who are you?" The woman smiled. "My name is Clara. I was one of the judges at the audition." We want to offer you a chance." Amelia blinked. Her hands trembled. Clara continued, "You did not win, but you moved us. I have a private modeling school. I want to sponsor you. Full scholarship, training, meals, clothes, a place to sleep. But only if you are ready to work harder than you ever have in your life." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. She nodded. "Yes, I am ready." Clara handed her a business card and an address. "Come tomorrow morning. Do not be late." Then she walked away. Amelia looked at the card like it was a golden ticket. She clutched it to her chest. She ran to the bridge where she kept her things. She packed everything in a plastic bag. That night she did not sleep. She just stared at the stars, whispering to her parents, "I am coming back. I promise." The next morning, Amelia arrived at the address on the card. It was a tall white building with glass windows and golden doors. She hesitated for a moment. Her reflection stared back at her. The same dirt on her arms, the same worn shirt, but her eyes were different now. They held hope. Clara was waiting at the front desk. "Right on time." "That is good. Come with me." Amelia followed her through a marble hallway, into a small room filled with mirrors and lights. "This is where your journey begins. But it will not be easy. Are you ready to be torn down and rebuilt?" Amelia nodded. "I have nothing to lose." Clara gave her new clothes, simple but clean. She handed her a key to a small dorm room upstairs. It had a bed, a desk, a lamp, and a bathroom with warm water. For the first time in years, Amelia washed away the dirt, the pain, the street. She stood under the shower until her skin turned red. She cried again, but this time, the tears mixed with soap and healing. Training began the next day. Early mornings, long walks, posture correction, facial expressions, runway balance. She failed over and over. She stumbled, she fell, but she never quit. Clara was strict. "Do it again. Chin up, shoulders back. You are not a victim anymore. You are a vision." Other girls at the academy whispered behind her back, "That is the trash girl. Why is she here? She does not belong." But Amelia shut them out. Every time she heard their voices, she remembered the nights she slept in the cold, the faces that laughed at her misery. She used that pain as fuel. One night she was practicing her turns when Clara entered the room. "You have fire, Amelia. But fire alone is not enough. You need control. You need grace." Clara stood beside her and demonstrated. Amelia watched every movement. She repeated it again and again, until sweat poured from her neck, until her muscles ached. Clara smiled softly. "That is better. Now do it again." Weeks turned into months. Her body changed. Her skin glowed. Her eyes sharpened. She learned to speak with elegance, to walk with power. She began to appear in local shows. Small crowds, small pay, but each step brought her closer to the stage she dreamed of. One evening after a shoot, Clara took her aside. "There is a national competition in 3 weeks. The winner gets a contract with an international brand. I want you to enter." Amelia froze. "Me?" Clara nodded. "You are ready. But more than that, you deserve to be seen." Amelia agreed. But fear crept into her mind. What if I fail? What if they laugh again? What if Adam and Eve see me and destroy everything? But she pushed those thoughts away. This was not about them. This was about the little girl in the alley, the one who never gave up. Every night she practiced in silence. Her reflection became her best friend. She whispered to herself, "I am not trash. I am not broken. I am a storm wrapped in beauty." The night before the competition, Clara came to her room. She handed Amelia a dress. It was white with silver threads. Elegant, powerful. Amelia held it like it was sacred. "You wear this. But remember, it is not the dress that makes you shine. It is your story." Amelia stood before the mirror. Her hands shook. Her eyes filled with tears. She could almost hear her parents' voices. "We are proud of you." She closed her eyes and whispered to the wind, "Tomorrow I will rise. The morning of the competition arrived with golden light streaming through the windows. Amelia stood silently in front of the mirror. Her hands trembled as she pulled the white dress over her bodies. It slid down perfectly like it was made just for her. She looked at herself and saw someone new. Not the girl who slept on the street. Not the girl who cried alone under bridges. She saw a warrior shaped by fire. At the venue, hundreds of contestants gathered. Some were professionals with years of experience. Others were influencers with millions of followers. Amelia walked among them like a shadow. Whispers followed her again. Who is she? Why is she here? Look at her shoes. But she kept her head high. Clara stood beside her. Remember, let your pain guide you. Let your strength carry you. The stage was vast. Blinding lights, flashing cameras, a panel of judges from the top fashion houses in the world. Backstage, Amelia waited for her name. Her heartbeat pounded like a drum. She thought of the alley, of the freezing nights, of the laughter that broke her spirit. Then she thought of the girl who picked up a flyer from the ground and dared to dream. Her name was called. She stepped onto the stage. The lights hit her face. She walked with poise, grace, fire. Every step was a memory. Every turn was a wound healed. The audience fell silent. The judges leaned in. She reached the end of the runway and held her gaze, strong, unshaken, then turned and walked. Back like the world belonged to her. Backstage, Clara was waiting with wet eyes. You just burned that stage to the ground. Amelia smiled faintly. I did not burn it. I claimed it. The competition ended late at night. The announcement came with a soft voice and a golden envelope. The winner of this year's crown, Amelia. Her name echoed through the hall. For a moment, everything froze. Then the crowd erupted. Amelia stood stunned, her hands over her mouth. She had done it. She had truly done it. On the stage, she accepted the crown with tears flowing down her cheeks. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted her name. They asked her about her inspiration, her journey. She looked straight into one of the cameras and said clearly, I came from nothing. I was thrown away. But today I stand here because I never stop believing that broken things can still shine. Her story spread like wildfire. News stations ran features. Social media exploded. From trash to triumph, they called it. Brands reached out. Designers begged to dress her. But among the messages was one that made her heart freeze. A message from Adam. He had seen everything. The show, the crown, the headlines. His message was short. Is that really you? You look unbelievable. We should meet. Amelia stared at it for a long time, then deleted it without replying. The next day, she walked down the same street where she used to sell newspapers. People who once ignored her now ran to take pictures. Some apologized. Some asked for autographs. She smiled but said nothing. She passed the alley where she once slept. It still smelled of rust and silence, but it no longer haunted her. She had turned that pain into power. She had taken their insults and stitched them into her crown. She no longer needed revenge. Her success was louder than any scream. Amelia sat by the hotel, window overlooking the lights of Las Vegas, the same city that once crushed her. Spirit now bowed beneath her feet. Her phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages, invitations, brand campaigns, talk shows, magazine covers. Her face was everywhere. But the message that caught her attention came from someone unexpected, Eve. It said she was sorry, that she had grown up, that what they did to Amelia was cruel, that she never thought Amelia would rise this far. Amelia stared at the message in silence. She remembered how Eve used to throw rocks at her feet, how she had filmed her crying on the street. Amelia deleted the message without a second thought. A few days later, a high-end fashion show invited her to be the closing model. The event was prestigious. Global audience. It would be held at one of the largest venues in the city. Amelia accepted without hesitation. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Not just to walk, but to show the world what survival looked like. The night before the show, she stood in her dressing room. Makeup artists worked silently. Stylists adjusted her gown. The dress was black with golden embroidery. It shimmered like fire under the light. She looked like a queen carved from storms. Clara entered and placed a hand on her shoulder. "This is your throne now. Make them see you." Backstage, the air was thick with nerves. Models whispered and paced. Cameras clicked endlessly. Amelia remained calm. Her eyes closed. Her breathing slow. She was not nervous. She was ready. When the announcer called her name, the entire room turned toward the runway. Amelia stepped forward. The lights hit her like sunlight on snow. She walked with grace. Each step carried the weight of 1,000 memories. Every glance, every movement, spoke of pain, of power, of rebirth. The audience stood in awe. Whispers of her name echoed through the hall. She reached the end of the runway and held her final pose. Strong, unbreakable. Applause erupted like thunder, and in the front row she saw them, Adam and Eve, older now, less arrogant, sitting silently, watching her with wide eyes, their mouths slightly open. She locked eyes with them for 1 second. No smile, no anger, just quiet victory. After the show, reporters swarmed her. They asked about the performance, about her rise. One asked if she had anything to say to the people from her past. Amelia paused, then answered clearly, "I forgive them, because without them I would not be here." The next day, her face graced the cover of the top fashion magazines. Headlines screamed her name, the girl from the streets who became a global icon. Offers came from Milan, Paris, Tokyo. Clara negotiated the biggest deals of her career. But Amelia remained grounded. She used her earnings to open shelters for street children. She created programs for girls who had been abandoned like her. She visited the same alley where she once starved and built a home for girls with no one to call family. The first room had her photo on the wall, not in a dress, but in rags, to remind them that even from the dirt, something beautiful can grow. One day, as she left the shelter, she saw a teenage girl sitting by the sidewalk holding a torn photo, her eyes empty, her clothes ragged. Amelia knelt beside her and asked softly, "Are you hungry?" The girl nodded. Amelia smiled gently. "Come with me. Your life starts now." She had become the woman she once prayed to meet. Fame became Amelia's shadow, but she never let it consume her. She still woke up early, still practiced her walk, still stood in front of the mirror and whispered the same words to herself. "I am not what they called me. I am who I chose to become." Clara continued to guide her through every contract and every opportunity. They traveled together to cities she once only saw in magazines. Paris welcomed her like a jewel. Milan offered her the front page of every billboard. New York bowed to her elegance. But no city meant as much to her as Las Vegas, the city that tore her apart, the city that made her whole. One afternoon, while visiting her old shelter, she was told someone was asking for her outside. She stepped out to find Adam standing near the gate. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes tired. He looked nothing like the boy who once called her garbage. He started to speak but paused, then finally said softly, "I wanted to say I am sorry for everything. I was cruel. I was stupid. I see now what I never saw before." Amelia listened without interrupting. The silence between them felt heavier than words. Adam looked down. "I lost everything. My father went bankrupt. My mother left. I work as a cashier now. When I saw you on TV, I almost didn't believe it. But I'm glad it's you. You deserve everything." She stared at him. The boy who once kicked her things into the gutter now stood before her in defeat. But there was no joy in his pain, no satisfaction, only quiet understanding. She nodded once. "I hope you find peace," then turned and walked away. That night she stared at the stars from her apartment balcony. The same stars she once cried to from the cold pavement. She whispered to the night, "I am not angry. I just wanted them to see me. Now they have." The next morning she met with Clara for a major announcement. A new international modeling competition would begin next season, and they wanted Amelia, not just to walk, but to be a permanent judge and mentor. Clara smiled proudly. "This is your legacy now. You will shape the next generation." Amelia agreed without hesitation. She knew there were more girls out there like her, lost, abandoned, invisible. She wanted to be the voice that told them they mattered. She wanted to be the hand that pulled them from the dust. Later that week, she returned to the alley one more time. The place where her life almost ended. The walls still stained. The air still stale. But now there were murals on the bricks. Paintings of girls with wings. Messages of hope. One read, "Rise even when they bury you." She sat on the same spot, where she once cried with an empty stomach and whispered, "Thank you to the ghost of her past. Thank you for breaking me. Thank you for forcing me to fight." As she walked away, a group of teenagers passed by. One of them stopped and whispered to the others, "That is Amelia, the girl who used to live here. Now she is a star." Amelia heard them. She smiled. She kept walking, her heels tapping against the sidewalk like a song of victory. Amelia stood on the set of a global campaign shoot. Cameras surrounded her. Directors gave quiet instructions. Stylists adjusted her gown every few minutes. She was the centerpiece of a vision worth millions. But her mind wandered far from the lights. She thought of the night she first saw a model in the crowd. How small and broken she felt then. Now she was the one others looked up to. Now she was the one little girls dreamed of becoming. Between shoots, she scrolled through her messages. One caught her attention. A letter from someone who signed only as E. The words were long and shaky. They spoke of regret, of memories, of shame. Eve had written it. She apologized for mocking Amelia when she was hungry. She confessed that her life was not perfect, that she hated who she had become, that she envied Amelia's strength. Amelia read the letter 3 times. Then she wrote back only one sentence. "I hope you find what you are looking for." That night she attended a gala held in her honor. The hall was filled with lights and laughter. Celebrities raised glasses to her journey. Billionaires shook her hand. Young girls approached her with tears in their eyes. "You changed my life," they said. "You made me believe I can be more." During her speech, she stood tall under the chandelier, her voice steady, her eyes clear. "I did not rise because the world helped me. I rose because I refused to stay where they left me. I am not the girl who was thrown away. I am the woman who rebuilt herself piece by piece." The crowd erupted in applause. But as she stepped down from the stage, she saw a familiar face in the back of the room, hidden near the exit. It was the boy who once laughed at her pain. Adam. He looked thinner, older, smaller somehow. He did not approach her. He only stood there and watched, then disappeared into the crowd. She did not chase him. She did not wave. She simply walked past with her head held high. She had already made peace with her past. Later that week, she received an award from an international foundation for her work with underprivileged girls. The presenter called her a beacon of strength, a light for the forgotten. She stood on the stage and accepted the award with quiet grace. But in her heart, she knew the real award was not made of glass. It was in the eyes of the girls who now had beds to sleep in, meals to eat, dreams to chase. Back at her apartment, she took out the old photo of her parents. Still worn, still faded. She placed it in a new frame and set it on her desk. She whispered, "Thank you. You did not live to see this. But every step I took was with you." Outside, the city lights sparkled like stars. And somewhere deep inside, Amelia felt something shift. A door closing. A wound finally healed. She was no longer running from her past. She was standing on top of it. Amelia woke before the sun and walked, barefoot, across the polished floor of her apartment. Her mornings were quiet now. No shouting, no hunger, no footsteps echoing down dirty alleyways. Just peace. and purpose. She brewed a cup of tea and opened her journal, a habit she kept since her days under the bridge. The pages were filled with dreams, hopes, memories, and scars. She wrote one line that morning: "I am not what happened to me. I am what I became in spite of it." Later, she arrived at a private studio, where dozens of young girls waited for her. Some were quiet, others nervous. Most carried stories not unlike hers. One girl approached with shaking hands and whispered, "My uncle said I'd never be anything." Amelia knelt beside her and said, "I heard the same thing. Now let's prove them wrong." She spent the day teaching them how to walk, not just on runways, but through life. How to carry their stories with pride. How to turn pain into posture. How to breathe through rejection. She did not need to scream her revenge. She became it. In the evening, Clara visited her office. She brought a folder filled with new offers. Another magazine, another brand, another campaign. But Clara noticed Amelia's gaze was distant. "You seem far away." Amelia smiled faintly. "I am thinking about the girl I used to be. I wonder if she'd recognize me." Clara nodded softly. She would, because everything you are today came from her. Later that night, Amelia received a call. A producer wanted to make a documentary about her life. From the streets to the spotlight. She hesitated for a moment, then agreed, not for fame, but for every unseen girl, still hiding in the dark. She wanted the world to know what it cost to rise. As filming began, she returned to the places that shaped her. The alley where she first slept, the recycling center, the public bathroom where she washed her face, the school corner, where Adam and Eve hurled insults at her every morning. She stood there in silence. She could still hear the laughter, the cruel jokes, but now they no longer cut her. They echoed like distant thunder behind a closed door. The crew captured her every word, every tear, every smile. They followed her to the shelter, to her mentoring sessions, to the bridge she once called home. They asked her what kept her alive all those years. She answered with a soft voice, "I wanted to see what happened if I kept walking." The film ended with a scene of her standing under the stars, her face lifted toward the sky. No makeup, no gown, just her, real, whole, alive. When the documentary aired, millions watched. People wept, sent letters, shared their own stories, and the world finally understood what it meant to fight without fists. Amelia became more than a model. She became a movement. The world now knew her name, but Amelia never forgot the silence of being unknown. She carried it with her like a secret flame, not as a wound, but as a reminder that every crown she wore was forged from pain. She stood at the entrance of her own fashion academy. The sign above read, "The Amelia Grace Institute," a place where broken girls were rebuilt, where their stories became strength, where their voices were louder than their scars. Inside, the halls were filled with laughter, music, the rhythm of hope. On the walls hung portraits of girls. From the shelter now walking in, shows around the world. Amelia looked at each one and whispered silently, "You made it. You made it out." That evening, the mayor held a special event in her honor. Thousands gathered. Former bullies, old teachers, city officials. Some came to applaud, others to be forgiven. Even Adam was there in the back, wearing a supermarket uniform and eyes full of apology. Amelia saw him. She nodded once. That was enough. As she walked onto the stage, the crowd rose. She did not need a speech. Her story had already spoken louder than any words. But she stepped to the microphone anyway. "I once believed I was nothing. I once believed I would never matter. But I was wrong. Not because the world told me otherwise, but because I decided to rise, even when no one reached for me." She paused, looked out over the crowd. "I am not here to be worshipped. I am here to be remembered by every girl who feels forgotten. I am here to show that even if you grow from trash, you can still become something beautiful." The crowd erupted into tears and cheers. But Amelia did not cry. Not this time. Her heart was steady, her soul calm. Later that night, She returned to the bridge, alone. She placed a bouquet of white lilies on the spot where she once curled up in hunger. She sat for a while staring at the stars, her voice soft in the darkness. I made it, Mom. I made it, Dad. You don't have to worry anymore. A breeze passed through the night, gentle, almost like a whisper. Amelia stood, straightened her shoulders, and walked away, not as a girl who was thrown away, not even as a woman who survived. She walked away as a legend born from ashes, and the city that once ignored her could now only watch her shine.